Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the crackle of a small fire in the dark. The night is colder than you expect. The air is sharp, filled with the scent of smoke and damp earth. You hear the faint shuffle of people settling down, the rustle of grass, the sound of a baby's quiet breathing pressed against its mother's chest. You are not in the present anymore. You are thousands of years back, long before cities, long before writing, long before anyone carved their name into stone. The world is wide, wild, and dangerous. Lions prowl in the distance. Wolves circle beyond the glow of the fire. The ground is uneven, the wind unforgiving. And yet, here in the circle of warmth, a mother hums softly to her child. Her voice is low, almost lost to the wind, but it is steady. This is the beginning of the story. Not kings, not wars, not monuments, just mothers and children trying to survive. Think about it. Every person alive today, including you, carries within them the memory of mothers who faced this world. They did not have medicine. They did not have shelter beyond wood, stone, and animal skin. They had no written guides to follow, no books of advice, no hospitals to turn to when something went wrong. And still, they raised children. Somehow, enough survived for life to continue. The mystery is simple, but deep. How did they do it? How did mothers keep fragile infants alive in a time when hunger, cold, predators, and violence waited at every turn? Picture yourself lying near that fire. The stars above are brighter than anything you've ever seen in the modern sky. There are no cities, no lights to dim them, just endless darkness lit by the slow wheel of constellations. A baby stirs, whimpers, then quiets as the mother rocks gently, humming a rhythm older than language itself. She doesn't know she is part of history. She doesn't think in terms of survival of the species. She is simply trying to get through the night, to keep the small body in her arms alive until morning. Yet, in doing so, she is shaping the future. Without her patience, without her strength, without her endless watching and listening, there would be no tomorrow for that child, and perhaps no tomorrow for you. The world of prehistory was never kind to children. Many did not survive past their first year. Fevers, falls, bites, starvation, so many things could take a life quickly. Mothers knew this, though they did not have the words we use now. They felt it in their bones, and still they tried. They wrapped infants in furs, pressed them close to their skin for warmth, and carried them everywhere, never letting them out of reach. When danger approached, it was often the mother who moved first, who hid, who ran, who shielded with her body. Think of the countless silent moments we will never know. A woman crouching in the grass, holding her child's mouth closed so the baby's cry would not draw a predator. A mother staying awake all night beside a fire, too afraid to sleep. Young girl, barely more than a child herself, cradling her newborn while older women taught her how to soothe, how to feed, how to survive. These are not stories that were written down. They are not in history books, because writing did not exist. Yet, no mother from 20,000 years ago left behind a diary or a letter. What they left instead is us. The fact that you are listening now means they succeeded again and again, for tens of thousands of years. And so, as we begin this long journey tonight, imagine yourself as part of that chain. You are not just an observer. In a way, you are a child in that circle, warmed by the fire, lulled by the hum of a mother's song. Her voice reaches across time. Her whisper is still in you. This is not a story of heroes or kings. It is not a story of battles or empires. It is something quieter, but just as powerful. It is the story of care, the story of mothers raising children, in a world that offered little kindness. Think of the questions we will ask. How did women give birth in a world without doctors? What did they feed their children when milk was not enough? How did they protect them from cold nights and hungry beasts? How did they teach them what to fear, what to eat, what to remember? Each answer is buried in fragments, bones, tools, traces of fire, and echoes in living cultures that still carry old ways. And between the facts, there is silence. A silence we will fill with careful imagination, always returning to the truth that mothers made survival possible. As the fire crackles lower, you shift on the ground. The earth beneath you is hard, unyielding, but the child in its mother's arms is warm, safe for now. The world outside is harsh, but here, in this circle of flickering light, there is tenderness. That tenderness is not written in stone, but it is carved into every life that followed. So tonight, as you rest, we will walk through time together. We will follow the footsteps of prehistoric mothers, from the moment of birth to the final lullaby. We will imagine their struggles, their quiet strength, and their small victories against a world that was never gentle. Close your eyes again. Let the firelight fade. The hum of that ancient lullaby is still there, soft and steady. It is the sound of survival, and it is where our story begins. Imagine the quiet before birth. A mother sits in the dim light of a cave or a small hut made of branches and hides. Her breathing is heavy, her body tense. Around her, other women gather, sisters, mothers, older women who have seen this before. There are no doctors, no clean beds, no medicine. Only firelight, whispered encouragement, and hands ready to help. Childbirth has always been dangerous. Even today, with all our knowledge and technology, it carries risk. But in prehistory, those risks were far greater. Infection, bleeding, obstructed labor, any of these could end both mother and child. There were no hospitals to run to, no painkillers to ease the hours. And yet, women gave birth again and again because they had to. Life depended on it. The first midwives, it's likely that mothers did not face birth alone. Evidence from modern hunter-gatherer groups shows that women often helped each other during labor. In some cultures, older women or experienced mothers acted as midwives, guiding the process, supporting, cutting the cord, and tending to both mother and newborn. This may have been true tens of thousands of years ago. The presence of others, especially other women, could mean the difference between life and death. Birth was not just a private moment, it was a community event, tied to survival itself. Imagine the scene, a small fire burning low, the scent of smoke heavy in the air. A woman grips the hand of her sister. Her cries echo in the dark. Outside, men stand watch for predators, listening but unable to help. Inside, the circle of women work quietly, whispering songs, rubbing her back, wiping her brow. And then, at last, the thin cry of a baby cuts through the silence. Relief washes over everyone. For now, both mother and child live. The fragility of life, but survival at birth, was never certain. Many infants did not live past their first days. Some were too small, too weak, born before their time. Others could not breathe, or were lost to infection. Archaeological sites sometimes show tiny graves, newborns, buried with beads, shells, or small ornaments. Each one is a reminder of how fragile life was. For mothers, loss was a constant shadow. They knew it not as an idea, but as experience. To carry a child, to endure the pain of birth, and then to lose that child within days, must have been heartbreaking. And yet, mothers kept trying. Without them, there would be no us. Birth rituals and beliefs, though we cannot know exactly what. Prehistoric mothers believed evidence from later ancient societies suggests that birth carried spiritual weight. In some cultures, charms, beads, or carvings were placed with women during pregnancy or labor. Figurines, like the famous Venus. Statues may have been symbols of fertility and safe delivery. Imagine a mother clutching a small carved stone as she labors, believing it carries power to help her through. Or older women chanting softly, calling on spirits or ancestors for protection. Birth was not only physical, it was sacred, a crossing between life and death, between the unknown and the living world. First cry, the moment of birth, was not just survival, it was hope. The cry of a newborn meant another chance for the group, another life to carry the lineage forward. In small prehistoric bands, every child mattered. A healthy birth meant strength. For the clan, picture the hush that falls after that first thin cry. The firelight flickers. The mother, exhausted, cradles the slippery, fragile body against her chest. Warmth passes between them. She may not smile, smiling is not certain when exhaustion runs deep, but she breathes, and she holds, and that holding is everything. The baby does not know the dangers of the world waiting outside, the wolves, the hunger, the storms. For now, the child knows only skin, warmth, heartbeat, and the steady sound of its mother's breath. Cutting the cord without knives of steel. How did they cut the cord? Likely with sharp flakes of stone, obsidian, or bone. Some groups may have bitten it through. Simple, direct, but effective. The tools left no sterilized surface, yet sometimes it worked. Enough times, it worked. Infections surely followed many births, and mothers often died in the days or weeks afterward. But enough survived to carry on. Their resilience is written into every life today, the role of grandmothers, archaeologists, and anthropologists speak of the grandmother hypothesis. It suggests that the presence of older women, too old to bear children themselves, played a key role in human survival. Grandmothers helped raise children, gather food, and support younger mothers through birth. This means prehistoric birth was rarely a solitary act. It was supported by the wisdom of women who had lived through it before. Each birth carried not just the strength of the mother, but of the whole group of women who surrounded her. Not all stories ended with joy. Sometimes the fire burned low, and the cries never came. Sometimes the mother's body grew still while the child remained. These losses are impossible to measure, but they shaped prehistoric life. Every survivor carried memories of them. Imagine a small burial at the edge of a settlement, a shallow grave, a mother and newborn laid together. No stone monument, no written words, just earth closing over the two. Their names are forgotten, but their struggle is part of the human story. Why? Birth still matters to history. Why dwell on these moments? Because they are the first threshold of survival. Without mothers enduring pain, risk, and loss, there would be no children to raise, no clans to grow, no history to follow. Every person alive is here because of a chain of births stretching back into the shadows of time. When we think of prehistory, we imagine stone tools, mammoth hunts, cave paintings. But behind every one of those things is a child who had to be born, fed, and kept alive by a mother. Birth is the hidden foundation of history. So, as we leave this section and move deeper into the story, hold this image in your mind. A circle of women in the firelight, a young mother trembling, a cry breaking the silence, a baby pressed to her chest. This was the first victory in the harsh world, simply bringing new life into it. And now we turn to the next challenge, keeping that fragile life alive once it has begun. Asterisk, the first cradle carried on the body. Imagine a newborn in the ancient world, small, fragile, helpless. No crib, no bed, no soft blankets bought from a market. The safest place for this child is not on the ground, not in a separate space, but against the warmth of a mother's body. For most of human history, the body itself was the cradle. Mothers carried their children everywhere, tied with animal skins, woven fibers, or simply held close in their arms. A baby was rarely set down. To leave an infant alone, even for a short time, was to risk death from cold, from predators, or from the simple danger of rolling into fire or water. Warmth and breath, the most important gift a mother gave, was warmth. Babies cannot hold heat. Well, on their own, their tiny bodies lose it quickly, and the nights of prehistory were often cold. A newborn pressed to a mother's chest shared her warmth, her heartbeat, her breath. Think of the rhythm, the rise and fall of a chest, the steady thump of a heart, the soft vibration of humming. These were the first sounds a child knew, the same ones heard in the womb. Against her skin, the infant stayed alive. This practice still exists in many traditional societies. Mothers tie babies to their backs or chests, keeping them close while they work. Modern science even confirms what prehistoric mothers already knew. Babies who are carried more cry less, breathe more evenly, and thrive better. Carrying while moving a mother's work never stopped. She gathered plants, dug roots, searched for berries, collected firewood, and sometimes joined in small hunts or fishing. To do this, she needed her hands free, so she carried her child with slings of hide, bark, or fiber. Imagine the sway of movement, a baby rocking as the mother walks, lulled by the rhythm of her steps. The sound of her heartbeat blends with the crunch of grass, the snap of twigs. The world outside is dangerous, but the child knows only this gentle rocking cradle. When danger came, carrying a baby close meant she could run, she could flee with her child clutched tight, the most precious thing she carried. Feeding on the move, breastfeeding was constant, not scheduled. A baby cried, and the mother nursed wherever she was, sitting under a tree, crouching near water. Walking across a plain, she offered milk when it was needed. Sometimes, if the mother was weak or her milk was slow, another woman in the group might nurse the child. Shared nursing, what anthropologists call alloparenting, was common. It was less about one mother and more about the survival of the group's children. In small clans, every infant mattered. Sleep beside the fire at night, babies slept close to their mothers, pressed against her body under furs or skins. Separate sleeping spaces were impossible. To leave an infant alone in the cold darkness would be to lose it. Picture the fire dying down, embers glowing faintly. Around it, the group huddles together for warmth. A mother curls around her child, shielding it from drafts, her body a barrier against the night. The baby shifts, whimpers, then settles as she hums softly. This closeness built trust. The child's first sense of the world was safety found in touch, sound, and warmth. That bond shaped not just individuals, but humanity itself. Danger never far, but carrying a child also meant weight. A mother's back ached, her arms grew tired. In times of danger, she could not move as quickly as others. Some mothers did not survive the threats that came suddenly: an ambush, a predator's leap, a river that had to be crossed. Their burden was also their purpose, to keep that small life alive, even at the cost of their own. We cannot know their names, but their choices echo in us. They carried, and so the children lived. Lessons from modern hunter-gatherers when we look at groups that still live in ways similar to the past: the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of southern Africa, the Inuit of the Arctic. We see the same patterns. Infants are carried almost constantly. They are rarely left to cry alone. They nurse frequently, sleep beside their mothers, and learn about the world from the rhythm of daily movement. This gives us a glimpse into how prehistoric life must have been. It was not about leaving children behind, but about bringing them into the flow of survival. A baby was part of the journey from the first breath. A moving nest, think of a bird's nest, small, safe, hidden. For prehistoric humans, the nest was not fixed. It moved. The mother's body was the nest, the carrier, the protector. Every day, as groups traveled for food or shelter, the child traveled too. This mobility meant infants were always exposed to new sights, sounds and scents: the crackle of fire, the chatter of voices, the smell of earth and smoke. Their world was full of sensation, filtered through the safety of touch. Emotional bond: modern science speaks of attachment. Prehistoric mothers did not know the word, but they lived it. Holding a baby close built deep bonds. The child felt safe, and the mother felt protective. That connection was not just emotion, it was survival. A baby who felt safe thrived. A mother who bonded deeply was more likely to fight, to endure, to keep trying even when the world was harsh. The first cradle songs, as she carried her child, a mother often sang or hummed. Simple sounds, repetitive rhythms, not for art, but for comfort. These were the first lullabies: a hum while grinding seeds, a soft song while walking, a low murmur to calm a restless infant. Those songs, lost to time, were the first music of humanity, before drums, before flutes, before painted caves. There were lullabies mothers humming to babies, keeping them calm in a dangerous world. Survival, through carrying so much of prehistory, is marked by tools, weapons, and hunts. But perhaps the most powerful tool of survival was simpler: the carrying sling, the mother's arms, the bond of skin to skin. Without this constant closeness, infants would not have survived. Too fragile, too exposed, too cold. By keeping them pressed to their bodies, mothers gave humanity its chance. As we move forward, remember this image: a woman walking across a wide plain, a child tied to her chest with a strip of hide. Her hands are free to gather berries, her eyes watch the horizon, but her heart listens always for the small breathing against her skin. That child is the future. She carries not only a baby, but the survival of her people. This was the first cradle, and in it, humanity rocked itself into survival. Asterisk. Close your eyes again and picture an infant nestled against its mother's chest. For the first months of life, its food is simple milk, warm and constant, given whenever the baby stirs or cries. There are no bottles, no formulas, no schedules. Written on paper, feeding is a rhythm, a heartbeat of daily life. Milk as the first lifeline, breast milk was the first food every child knew. It was not only nourishment, but also medicine. It carried warmth, immune protection, and comfort. In a world filled with invisible dangers, disease, infection, hunger, milk was the safest thing an infant could consume. Mothers nursed often, sometimes every hour, sometimes for only a few moments before the baby drifted back to sleep. There was no concept of spoiling a child with too much comfort. A baby's survival depended on quick responses, and so mothers listened closely for every sound, every stir. Long years of nursing, unlike in many modern societies, prehistoric children were likely breastfed for years, often 3 or 4. Food was scarce and sometimes dangerous to eat. Nursing for long periods gave children the best chance to survive, especially when they were too young to chew tough roots or digest raw grains. Imagine a toddler still clinging to its mother for milk, even while learning to walk, to explore, to mimic the older children. This was not unusual, it was the rhythm of survival. Shared nursing, but mothers were not always strong. Illness, hunger, or exhaustion could reduce milk. In those moments, another woman might nurse the child. Anthropologists call this alloparenting, the sharing of care. In small prehistoric groups, children belonged to the community as much as to one mother. Picture a scene, a group of women sitting together by the fire. Infants pass from one lap to another, fed not only by their mothers but also by aunts, sisters, or grandmothers who still produced milk. Each child was precious, and no drop was wasted. This sharing built bonds across the group, knitting survival into a wider web. First solid foods, at some point, milk was no longer enough. Slowly, mothers introduced solid foods. But what did those first foods look like? There were no bowls of soft porridge, no mashed fruit from markets. Instead, food was chewed by adults, and passed to children, meat softened by saliva, roots crushed into pulp, seeds ground into coarse paste. The first solid meals were not pleasant or sweet. They were practical. Bits of chewed grain, mashed nuts, pieces of roasted tuber, sometimes broth from boiled bones. Simple, rough, but full of the energy needed for growth. The dangers of weaning. Weaning was one of the most dangerous times in a child's life. Once they moved from milk to other foods, risks multiplied. Dirty water could bring disease. Rough or spoiled food could cause illness. Malnutrition was common if crops failed or hunts were poor. Archaeological evidence from early farming communities shows high rates of child mortality during weaning. Skeletons of children often carry signs of malnutrition and anemia. To stop nursing meant exposure to all the dangers of adult food. For mothers, this was a careful balance. They nursed as long as possible, stretching their own bodies thin, to delay the moment when risk would rise. Hunger and scarcity. Imagine the winter months, when plants were scarce and hunts failed. Mothers ate less themselves, yet still tried to provide milk. Hunger gnawed at them, but the baby's cry always came first. A mother might give the choicest morsels of meat to her child, leaving herself the tougher scraps. This sacrifice is quiet in history, invisible in stones or bones, but it was repeated endlessly. Without it, children would not have lived long, enough to become the next generation of hunters, gatherers, and mothers themselves. The ritual of feeding was not only survival, it was also bonding. A child at the breast stared up at the mother's face, memorizing its lines, its expressions. This was the first lesson in human connection, eye contact, trust, warmth. Later, when solid foods were introduced, Feeding became a shared event. Around the fire, children watched adults eat, learned which foods were safe, copied gestures, reached for pieces. The act of eating was education. Every bite taught them what belonged to their people's world. Echoes in modern traditions, many societies today, children still nurse for years, still receive chewed food from elders, still sleep and eat beside their mothers constantly. These echoes give us clues about the past. They show us that prehistoric feeding was less about separation and more about closeness, constant, physical, shared. The mother's burden, but the cost was heavy. Nursing drained a mother's body of energy. If she had another child too soon, both could suffer. Some groups may have used herbs or rituals to space pregnancies, but many did not. A mother could find herself carrying one child while still nursing. Another, her strength was tested beyond measure, and yet, again and again, she gave. She fed, she endured. Weaning as a transition, weaning was not just a change in diet. It marked a shift in childhood. A weaned child began to eat with the group, to join in the rhythm of meals, to learn the rules of sharing and scarcity. It was a first step into the wider world, away from the complete dependence on one mother. Imagine the pride, and also the fear, in those moments. Pride that a child had grown strong enough to join the group at the fire. Fear that the fragile body might not withstand the new risks. Mothers lived with both feelings at once. Food, love, and memory. Every meal in prehistory carried meaning. It was not just calories, it was safety, trust, connection. A child fed at the breast or from a mother's hand learned that the world, though dangerous, could also give comfort. And though none of those mothers wrote their stories, their care is still alive. Every human alive today carries the memory of countless meals given in the dark. Countless times when a mother sacrificed her share so her child could live. So as we close this section, hold the image. A mother chewing tough roots to soften them, then placing them in her child's mouth. The child gumming the food, swallowing awkwardly, yet growing stronger. It is not a glamorous moment. It will never be painted on a cave wall. But it is as important as any hunt, any tool, any fire. Protection from the world. Picture the night again. A small fire burns in the darkness, its glow a fragile island against the vast unknown. Beyond the light, shadows shift. The cry of a wolf rises in the distance. Somewhere nearby, the rustle of grass hints at something moving. In this world, danger is never far. For a newborn, survival depended not only on food and warmth, but also on protection. And it was often the mother who served as the first shield, the first wall between the fragile child and everything outside. Predators at the edge of light. The prehistoric world was full of predators. Wolves, lions, leopards, bears, snakes. A baby's cry, thin and sharp, carried easily through the night. To predators, it was the sound of weakness. Mothers knew, instinctively, how dangerous this was. When a child stirred, she hushed it quickly, pressed it closer, and muffled its mouth if needed. Silence could mean survival. Imagine a mother crouching low in tall grass, her arms wrapped tightly around her infant. Her breath is shallow, her body tense. She cannot move, cannot speak. A shadow passes by, a predator searching for an easy kill. She waits, heart pounding, until it is gone. Her body is both cradle and shield, shelter from the elements. Predators were not the only threat. The earth itself tested survival. Storms lashed across plains. Rivers swelled without warning. Winters froze the land until food was scarce and breath turned to frost. Mothers had to think not only of food but of shelter. They wrapped their children in animal skins, tucked them into the warmest parts of a camp, and held them close through bitter nights. In caves, they placed children away from the wind, deeper in the dark where the air was still. The first homes were not made of bricks or stone walls. They were made of arms and bodies. A mother's embrace was the original shelter, fire as protection. Fire was more than warmth, it was safety. Its glow kept many predators at bay. Its smoke cleared insects. Its embers offered comfort in the darkest hours. Mothers often sat near fires with children pressed to their chests, their eyes always on. The flames, they added wood, kept watch, never letting the fire die completely. To let it go out could mean a cold night, or worse, a night when predators dared to creep closer. Imagine the scene, a circle of faint orange light, smoke rising into the black sky. Around it, the group sleeps, but the mother stays half awake, rocking, feeding, and watching. Her child stirs, and she hums low, her song blending with the crackle of wood. The fire burns because she tends it, and so her child survives the night. Illness and invisible threats, not all dangers could be seen. Illness was constant. A cough, a fever, a wound that would not heal any of these could take a life quickly. Mothers had no medicine in bottles, no doctors to call. What they had instead were plants, knowledge passed through generations, and endless care. They brewed leaves into teas, rubbed herbs onto skin, cooled fevers with water, wrapped wounds in moss or bark. They whispered prayers, sang over sick children, begged unseen forces for mercy. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it did, and single quotes to archaeological finds suggest that Neanderthals and early humans used plants like willow bark, which contains natural pain relievers. Mothers may have known these secrets, learned by watching animals or by trial and error. Their knowledge was fragile, never written, but carried in memory and shared through teaching. Teaching fear protection was not only physical, it was also about teaching. Children had to learn quickly what was safe and what was deadly. A mother's warning glance, a sharp sound, or a guiding hand pulled a toddler away from danger fire, snakes, cliffs, rivers. Over time, these lessons shaped instinct. The raised hand, the firm no, the sudden pull of an arm, all ways of showing a child what not to touch, where not to go, in these small gestures. Mothers passed on survival knowledge, as vital as any hunt or tool. The burden of vigilance but constant protection came at a cost. Mothers rarely rested deeply. Their sleep was light, broken by every stir, every cry, every sound outside the camp. They lived in a state of alertness, always ready to move, to hush, to flee. Think of the toll, hunger, exhaustion, fear, pressing, day after day. And yet, despite the weight, they endured. They carried children through storms, through migrations, through lean times. Their vigilance was the quiet labor that never ended. Loss and resilience still, even the strongest protection, sometimes failed. Predators struck. Illness claimed lives. Accidents happened in moments. Many children never grew past infancy. The grief must have been deep, though we can only imagine it. Archaeological sites reveal small graves, sometimes with beads or ornaments placed beside the child. These small acts show love, memory, sorrow. Even in a world of constant danger, mothers mourned, and yet they continued. They bore more children, protected again, tried again. Their resilience is the reason we exist. Mothers as the first walls. When we think of prehistoric survival, we often picture hunters with spears, men chasing mammoths, tools cutting stone. But just as important were the quiet acts of mothers, keeping watch, soothing cries, tending fires, teaching fear, guarding sleep. They were the first walls against the world's dangers, not walls of stone, but walls of flesh and spirit. So as we end this section, imagine the picture: a mother sitting at the edge of the firelight, her child wrapped tightly to her chest. Beyond her, the dark world waits, full of teeth and storms. But here, in this small circle of warmth, the child is safe. Not because the world is kind, but because the mother refuses to let it take her child without a fight. This is protection, in its oldest form, and from it, all of humanity's future grew. Asterisk teaching through touch and song. Imagine the world before words. There are no written letters, no carved signs, no schools with teachers and lessons. Yet children still needed to learn what was safe to eat, how to walk through grass without making noise, how to listen to the sounds of the forest. And their first teachers were their mothers. Long before language took shape, learning began with touch, with rhythm, with sound. The language of touch, a hand guiding a child away from danger, fingers pointing toward a safe path, a gentle pat of reassurance. Touch was the first instruction, the simplest way to pass on knowledge. Picture a toddler, stumbling near the fire. The mother pulls the child back, presses a firm hand against its chest, then smooths its hair. In that moment, the child learns both fear and comfort, fear of fire, comfort of safety. Through thousands of such touches, pulling, holding, guiding, a child slowly understood the world. The body spoke where words did not exist. Life itself carried rhythm, the sound of grinding seeds between stones, the beat of feet walking across the earth, the steady crackle of fire. Children learned by listening, by feeling those rhythms repeated again and again. Mothers taught through repetition. A baby rocked in time with footsteps, a song hummed while working, a pattern tapped against skin. These rhythms became memory. Long before children could form sentences, they carried knowledge in their bodies, stored in patterns of movement and sound. We often think of lullabies as gentle songs to soothe children, but they were more than that. They were teaching tools. A repeated hum, a rising and falling note, a soft chant. These sounds gave children a sense of calm, of predictability, of safety. Imagine a mother grinding roots with a stone. As she works, she hums. The baby, tied to her chest, hears the vibration of her voice through her skin. The sound becomes linked with warmth, with food, with comfort. Over time, these sounds shape memory, teaching the child when to rest, when to stay calm when the world is safe. The first songs of humanity were not sung in caves for ceremony. They were sung at the breast, in the arms, by mothers soothing children. Even before language, play was a kind of teaching. A mother might pass a small stick or stone to her child, letting it feel the texture, mouth it, drop it. Slowly, the child learned what objects were safe, what could be grasped, what was useful. A game of peekaboo, the hiding and revealing of a face, taught the idea that things could disappear and return. A bounce on the lap taught rhythm and balance. A tickle taught joy and bonding. These small moments built the foundation of understanding. When language began to form, Mothers likely used rhythm and song to fix words in memory. Simple chants, repeated phrases, stories told in a sing-song voice helped children remember. In many cultures today, nursery rhymes and chants still serve the same purpose. They turn knowledge into music so that it will not be forgotten. Archaeologists find flutes carved from bird bones, dating back tens of thousands of years. These were not just instruments for adults. They may have echoed lullabies or taught children the first lessons of rhythm. Music, learning, and care were intertwined from the start. Beyond facts of survival, mothers also taught emotions. Through tone of voice, through soothing touches, through gentle rocking, they showed children what safety felt like. These lessons went deeper than words. They shaped how a child would trust, how they would bond with others, how they would see the world. A child who was soothed learned that fear could end. A child who was held learned that pain was not permanent. These were lessons as vital as knowing which berries were poisonous or which animals to avoid. Mothers were not alone in this teaching. Aunts, sisters, and grandmothers added their own songs, their own touches, their own rhythms. Children grew in a circle of sound and care, absorbing from many voices. This shared teaching meant knowledge was not tied to one person. It spread across the group, held in many memories. Even if a mother was lost, her child still carried on with others who remembered the same songs, the same gestures, the same lessons. Alongside songs came stories. At night, as fires burned low, mothers may have whispered simple tales to children. Perhaps stories of animals, of spirits, of ancestors. They would have been short, repetitive, easy to follow. More than entertainment, they carried lessons, warnings about predators, reminders of safe places, guidance on how to live. A child fell asleep to the rhythm of words, not yet fully understood, but deeply felt. The world entered them through sound, long before it entered through reason. We often think knowledge needs books, but for most of human history, it was carried in voices, in gestures, in song. Mothers were the first keepers of this knowledge. They repeated, they sang, they showed, and through this patient repetition, children grew into adults who knew how to survive. This way of teaching was fragile, always one generation away from being forgotten, and yet it endured for tens of thousands of years, carried not in libraries, but in lullabies. So picture again the fire at night. A child stirs, whimpers, the mother hums, low and steady. The song has no words, only rhythm, only tone, but it carries meaning. It says, "You are safe, you are warm, you can rest." The child's breathing slows. Its small hand clutches fur, then relaxes. Around them, the night continues, full of unseen dangers. But within this small circle of sound and touch, the child is learning the most important lesson of all, that love can be stronger than fear, through touch and song. Mothers shaped not only their children, but humanity itself. The patterns they passed on built the foundation for language, for memory, for culture. Every word spoken today, every song ever sung, carries within it the echo of those first quiet lessons given in the arms of mothers. Long ago, childhood and clans imagine again the glow of the fire. A mother sits with her child pressed against her chest, but if you look closer, you'll see she is not alone. Around her are other women, older and younger, each with their own children, each offering hands, food, or songs. Aunts, sisters, and grandmothers are part of the same circle. In the prehistoric world, no child was raised by a single pair of hands. Survival was too difficult, the dangers too constant. Care had to be shared. Childhood belonged not just to the mother but to the clan. Anthropologists often speak of alloparenting, the sharing of childcare by people other than the biological mother. In small bands of foragers, this was not just common, it was necessary. While a mother searched for food, another woman held her baby. While she rested, someone else soothed. While she gave birth to another child, older daughters or sisters carried the first. This meant that children grew up surrounded by care. Their earliest memories were not of one face, but many. Love and protection flowed through a web of women. Binding the group together, grandmothers played a powerful role. Unlike most animals, human females live long after they can no longer have children. Why? One answer is that grandmothers mattered for survival. An older woman could not only gather food but also carry knowledge. She had seen many births, many losses, many seasons of hunger. Her wisdom guided younger mothers. Her hands freed them from constant care. Her stories taught children what to fear and what to trust. A child held by a grandmother was not only safe. In the moment, it was also receiving the weight of generations' lessons remembered, dangers avoided, skills refined. Brothers, fathers, and uncles, though mothers and women carried much of the burden, men also took part. Brothers played with children, carried them on their shoulders, gave them small tools to mimic work. Fathers hunted or gathered food, but they also bonded through touch and laughter. An uncle might carve a toy spear for a young boy, or show a girl how to throw small stones. Through this, children learned their roles within the clan. Care and teaching flowed across the group, not limited to one bond of blood. Play, as learning children, did not sit in classrooms, yet they learned constantly. Play was their school. Together, they mimicked adults digging with sticks, chasing one another, pretending to hunt or gather. Under watchful eyes, they explored. They climbed rocks, splashed in streams, followed trails. Mothers and others corrected, with a look or a sharp sound when danger came too close. But freedom was also part of survival. To grow strong, a child needed to stumble, to test limits, to feel the world. Play was not wasted time. It was practice for adulthood. Bonds beyond. Blood in small bands. Families blended. A child who lost a mother could be taken in by another woman, fed by another's milk, protected as if it were her own. Survival required this generosity. Because of it, children often grew up with a sense of belonging that stretched beyond one household. They were part of the group's identity, shaped by many voices. Even if a mother was gone, the clan carried her child forward. Of course, protection and love were not the only lessons. Children also had to learn restraint, patience, and respect for group needs. A child who grabbed too much food might be corrected sharply. One who cried too long might be hushed with firmness. Discipline in these groups was likely more about subtle social pressure than harsh punishment. A glance, a gesture, a quiet withdrawal of attention all taught a child how to behave within the group. Through this, children learned that survival depended on cooperation. Selfishness risked the whole clan. Sharing, patience, and obedience were the rules of life. At certain ages, children passed into new stages of life. Though details are lost to time, echoes survive in later societies. A first hunt, a first gathering, a first song remembered each marked a transition. Mothers and elders likely guided these moments, celebrating small steps. A child who learned to walk was welcomed into the rhythm of travel. A child who helped carry food was honored as useful. These quiet rituals gave children pride and connection. Perhaps the greatest gift of the clan was not food or shelter, but emotional safety. A child surrounded by many caring hands grew with trust. If one mother was tired, another picked up the child. If one was gone, others remained. The web held firm. This constant presence reduced fear. It gave children confidence to explore, to learn, to stumble and rise again. In a dangerous world, that trust may have been the strongest foundation for survival. When we imagine prehistoric life, we sometimes picture isolated nuclear families like ours today. But the reality was different. Childhood was shared. Every adult was a teacher, every elder a guide, every older child a helper. This wider family gave strength that no single parent could offer. It spread the burden and multiplied the care. In the harshness of prehistory, it was the clan that raised the child. So picture it once more. The fire at night, children curled together in sleep, mothers and grandmothers nearby, men keeping watch. At the edges, a baby stirs, and a hand, perhaps not its mother's, reaches to soothe it. A toddler cries, and an older sister picks it up, bouncing until it settles. This is the true picture of prehistoric childhood, not loneliness, not isolation, but a circle of care. Within it, children grew strong enough to face the world. The saying we use today, "It takes a village to raise a child," was not a poetic thought in prehistory. It was reality. Without the clan, without shared care, children would not have survived. And without those children, humanity's story would have ended long ago. Danger, loss, and resilience. Close your eyes again and picture the firelight fading low. Around it, children sleep in small bundles of fur. The night is quiet, but the stillness carries weight. In the prehistoric world, not every child would wake with the dawn. For all the love, all the protection, all the teaching, life was fragile. Illness, hunger, accidents, and predators took many before they grew. Mothers knew this deeply. Loss was not rare, but constant, a shadow always near. Archaeologists and anthropologists believe that in prehistoric times, nearly half of all children died before reaching adulthood. Many never survived their first year. The world was dangerous, and childhood was the most vulnerable stage. For mothers, this meant that every birth carried not only hope, but also fear. Each new cry of a baby was a joy, but also a question: would this one survive? Fever, cough, infection. Today, these can often be treated, but for prehistoric mothers, they were mysteries. A baby who coughed for days might not recover. A wound from a fall could fester. Diarrhea from spoiled food or dirty water could end life quickly. Mothers tried what they could, cooling fevers with water, using herbs to soothe, singing to comfort. Sometimes children healed. Sometimes they slipped away. And there was no answer, no cure, only the ache of watching life fade. The world itself was full of dangers. A child wandering too near the fire, slipping into water, eating a poisonous plant, stumbling into a predator's path. Mothers watched carefully, but not every danger could be prevented. Imagine the constant vigilance, the quick hand pulling a toddler back, the sharp glance warning against a dangerous path. Yet even with such care, accidents happened. The world was not built for safety. Perhaps the hardest danger was hunger. In years of poor hunting or failed harvests, food grew scarce. Mothers often gave up their own share to feed children, but sometimes there was simply not enough. Malnutrition left children weak, unable to fight off sickness. In small graves, archaeologists have found the bones of children showing signs of starvation. Their bodies tell a story of slow decline, of hunger that no mother's love could cure. We cannot truly know the grief of prehistoric mothers, but we can imagine it. To hold a child in arms one night, only to bury it the next. To hear the silence where cries once were. To keep going when the ache never left. In some burials, children were laid to rest with beads, shells, or ornaments. These small gestures tell us something important. Grief was real, love was deep, memory mattered. Mothers and clans did not simply forget. They honored, even in silence. Underscore yet despite the grief, mothers continued. They bore more children, raised them, tried again and again. This resilience was not just personal strength, it was the survival of humanity itself. If loss had ended their will, our story would have stopped long ago. Resilience meant rising after sorrow, facing hunger again, watching the skies for storms, listening for predators, holding the next baby as tightly as the last. It meant enduring pain that left no marks on stone but lived on in memory. Mothers did not grieve alone. In clans, sorrow was shared. Other women comforted, carried infants, supported in times of loss. Grandmothers whispered encouragement. Sisters helped with food or care. This shared grief allowed mothers to keep going. Children, too, became part of resilience. Surviving siblings carried the memory of those lost, learning early how fragile life could be. Their strength, shaped by both love and loss, was passed to the next generation. Even in the face of so much danger, there were moments of joy. A child's first steps, the sound of laughter, a healthy recovery from illness, a season of plenty when bellies were full and nights were calm. These small joys gave mothers strength. They reminded them that survival was possible, that not all nights ended. In silence, hope, fragile but real, kept them trying again. Every person alive today is proof of resilience. Behind each of us is an unbroken chain of mothers who endured loss but did not give up. They kept raising children despite sorrow, despite hunger, despite danger. Their resilience is not written in books or carved in monuments. It is carried in blood, in memory, in the fact that humanity continued. So imagine once more the fire at night. A mother sits with empty arms, her eyes on the flames. The clan is quiet, grief heavy. Yet tomorrow the fire will burn again. Tomorrow children will still be carried, still be fed, still be sung to. This is resilience, not the absence of sorrow, but the choice to continue despite it. Through danger and loss, mothers gave humanity its future. Their strength was quiet, unseen, but it was the foundation of survival. Every lullaby sung, every child carried, every fire tended was an act of defiance against a world that tried to take more than it gave. And because they endured, we are here. Mothers and the rise of agriculture. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived as hunters and gatherers. They moved with the seasons, followed animals, collected roots, berries, and seeds. Life was dangerous, but it was also balanced with the land. Then, around 10,000 years ago, something changed. People began to plant seeds and stay in one place. Agriculture was born. At first glance, this may seem like progress, a gift to mothers and children. More food, more stability, more shelter. But the truth is more complicated. Farming brought new struggles, new risks, and new burdens especially. For mothers, Foraging mothers spent much of their day moving, gathering, nursing, carrying. With farming, the work grew heavier. Now there were fields to tend, crops to plant and harvest, animals to herd, and stores of food to guard. A mother might nurse her child in the morning, then walk into the fields with the baby tied to her back. She bent low to plant seeds, her body aching, her hands in the soil. When the child cried, she paused to feed, then returned to labor. The burden of food production fell heavily on women. They worked not only for survival in the moment, but also for the future harvest. The clan's next season, foragers ate many different plants and animals, a varied diet that brought balance. With farming, diets narrowed. In some regions, people lived mostly on grains like wheat, barley, or rice. This meant less protein, fewer vitamins, and more illness. Children, especially, suffered. Bones from early farming villages often show signs of malnutrition, stunted growth, and disease. Mothers gave all they could, but when food itself lacked balance, their children grew weaker. Farming also brought people into close contact with animals, cows, goats, pigs, chickens. With animals came new diseases. Infections passed from livestock to humans, spreading through crowded villages. For the first time, epidemics appeared. A mother might nurse her child only to see it struck with fever or rash she could not cure. Illness spread quickly in small, settled groups, claiming young lives. Foragers could move when food ran out or danger came. Farmers stayed in one place. This made life more predictable, but it also trapped mothers in cycles of labor and scarcity. If crops failed, there was no easy escape. Hunger pressed harder. The freedom to follow food was replaced by the responsibility of staying, tending, and hoping for harvest. Mothers carried this burden, knowing their children's survival depended on the soil's success. With farming came property, fields, animals, and houses could be owned, passed down, fought over. Men often controlled this property, while women's roles became tied more strictly to household and childcare. For mothers, this sometimes meant less freedom. In foraging groups, women moved, worked, and decided alongside men. In farming societies, their lives grew more confined, their labor more tied to the home. This shift shaped not only daily survival, but also the place of mothers in culture and society. Still, farming changed childhood in other ways too. With food stored in houses and villages, children spent more time in one place. They played near fields, helped with small tasks, and learned skills tied to settled life. Mothers taught children how to grind grain, carry water, tend small animals. These tasks became part of growing up, part of survival in the new world of farming. Agriculture also meant more children. With steady food, populations grew. Mothers bore children more frequently, sometimes every 2 or 3 years instead of every 4 or 5, as in foraging groups. This constant cycle, pregnancy, nursing, caring, then pregnancy again, pushed mothers to their limits. Their bodies bore the strain, their strength stretched thin. Yet without this, farming villages could not grow. The rise of farming also changed beliefs around motherhood. Fertility became sacred, tied to the success of crops and herds. In many early farming cultures, figurines of women with round bodies and full breasts were carved, perhaps symbols of life and abundance. For mothers, this meant their role was honored, but also weighed down with expectation. They were not only raising children, but carrying the hopes of harvest, survival, and community, despite new houses, stored food, and walls. danger never vanished. Predators still lurked, hunger still came. In lean years, disease spread faster. Mothers continued to protect, to nurse, to endure loss. Farming changed the shape of their struggle, but not the reality of it. So was agriculture a gift or a curse for mothers? In truth, it was both. It gave more food in good years, more children, more stability, but it also brought harder work, poorer diets, new diseases, and greater inequality. For mothers, the task remained the same: to keep fragile children alive in a harsh world. Only the tools and challenges changed. Picture a small farming village. Houses of mud or wood clustered together, smoke rising from hearths. In one, a mother sits grinding grain on a stone, her baby tied to her back. Another child plays at her feet, chewing on a piece of bread. The work is endless, her body tired, her hands raw from stone and soil. Yet she keeps going because her children depend on her. Around her, other women do the same. This is the rhythm of the new world: fields, hearth, children, endless cycles of care. Through this shift, one truth remained: mothers were the heart of survival. Farming changed food, shelter, and society, but it did not lessen the need for their strength. If anything, it demanded more. Every harvest, every village, every growing population was built on their labor, their milk, their vigilance. They carried humanity through yet another transformation, enduring new hardships to keep the fire of life burning. And so, from caves and plains to villages and fields, mothers continued. The world changed, but their task did not: to raise children. In a world that was never easy, never safe, but always worth surviving. Legacy of prehistoric mothers. Close your eyes and think of your own life. The fact that you are here, breathing, listening, alive, is not a small miracle of the present. It is the result of a chain so long and unbroken that it stretches back tens of thousands of years. And at the center of that chain are mothers. Every single person alive today is descended from women who faced hunger, danger, loss, and exhaustion, and who still manage to raise children through it. Their names are lost, their faces unknown, but their legacy lives in every heartbeat, in every breath we take. Genetic studies show that our ancestry is not evenly spread. Some male lineages disappeared entirely, but female lineages survived with remarkable strength. Mitochondrial DNA, passed down only through mothers, links us back to women who lived tens of thousands of years ago. This means that the continuity of life, your life, was carried not just by humanity in general, but by specific mothers who endured when so many did not. Their blood runs through you. Their survival is yours. But legacy is not only about blood. Mothers also pass down knowledge: how to nurse, how to feed, how to soothe, how to keep fire alive, how to avoid poisonous plants, how to heal with herbs, how to listen for danger. These lessons were never written down, yet they were carried across generations. Imagine a grandmother teaching her daughter how to wrap an infant for warmth. The daughter grows, becomes a mother, teaches her own child. Thousands of years later, those same instincts still guide mothers. Cover the child. Hold it close, soothe it with voice and touch. The lessons survived, unbroken. We often think of culture as tools, art, or rituals, but the first culture may have been care itself. The ways mothers taught songs, carried children, shared food, and passed on stories shaped not only survival but also identity. Every lullaby hummed in the dark was not just comfort, it was the seed of language, rhythm, and storytelling. Every gesture of care was part of building what it meant to be human. The sacrifices of mothers rarely left traces in archaeology. Stones, bones, and tools survive. But the countless moments of giving up food, staying awake through cold nights, or walking miles with aching bodies are invisible. Yet those sacrifices are why we exist. They are written not in artifacts, but in our very presence. We are the record. For many prehistoric mothers, survival meant enduring in silence. There were no words to express grief fully, no monuments to honor them, no songs remembered beyond a generation. Yet their strength echoed in action. They rose each day to nurse, to protect, to feed. They endured loss and kept moving. This quiet resilience became humanity's foundation. Think of how fragile life was in those times. So many dangers, so many chances for the line to end, and yet it did not. Again and again, mothers pushed life forward, not through great battles or monuments, but through the simple act of keeping children alive. Their legacy is not grand or loud. It is steady, continuous, unbroken. It is the reason history could even begin. Though we live in modern worlds with hospitals, supermarkets, and safety nets, the echoes of prehistoric motherhood remain. The instinct to hold, to soothe, to sacrifice is ancient. The lullabies, the touch, the rhythm of care, they are threads woven through time. When a child cries and a mother rocks it gently, she is repeating actions carried across millennia. When a grandmother gives advice on feeding or soothing, she is part of a chain that began before writing. The legacy of prehistoric mothers is alive. In every act of care we see today, it is easy to forget them, to let their memory fade, because they left no names, no books, no temples. But if you pause, you can feel their presence. They are in your heartbeat, your breath, your very existence. Gratitude for them is not just historical, it is personal. For without them, you would not be here. Without their endurance, there would be no you at all. The story of mothers in prehistory is not only about the past, it is also about the present and the future. Their endurance made everything that followed possible. Farming, cities, writing, art, science, all of it. The tallest towers and the brightest ideas rest on the foundation of children kept alive by women who had nothing but their bodies, their voices, and their will. They are not forgotten. They live in us. So, as we close this section, imagine one last image. A line of women stretching back into the shadows of time. Each holds a child. Some walk with heads bowed in grief, others with eyes bright with joy. They pass the children, forward, one to another, across the centuries, until at last the child reaches you. That child is your life, and their legacy is you. Closing a soft lullaby across the ages, the fire is low now. The embers glow faintly, sending thin lines of smoke into the night. Around the fire, the clan sleeps. Mothers, fathers, children, grandparents all curled close, sharing warmth. Somewhere a baby stirs. A soft cry rises, not loud, but enough to break the silence. The mother shifts, lifting the child against her chest. She hums, low and steady, the same rhythm used for thousands of years. The sound blends with the crackle of the embers, with the night wind moving through grass. Slowly, the baby's breathing steadies. The cry fades. Sleep returns. That sound, the mother's hum, is more than comfort. It is a whisper across time. The same soft songs soothed children in caves, in huts, in fields, in villages. The same rocking carried infants across endless plains, through storms, through hunger, through danger. Every lullaby, every hum, every quiet rhythm carried humanity forward. They were not recorded on stone walls or written on clay tablets, but they were carved into the memories of children who grew, survived, and became the next generation of mothers and fathers. When we think of history, we often imagine kings, battles, inventions, discoveries. Yet beneath all of those are the quiet, unseen acts of mothers who kept life going. The first fire tended, the first food chewed and given, the first song hummed in the dark. These are the true foundations. Without them, there would be no hunters, no farmers, no builders, no dreamers. Humanity's story was not built on monuments. It was built in the arms of mothers, one child at a time. You are part of this story. Your existence is proof of countless victories, small but vital. Victories of warmth given on cold nights, of food shared in times of hunger, of danger endured and overcome. Each success was fragile, but together they formed an unbroken chain. Think of it, every breath you take today began with a mother's protection long ago. Every heartbeat carries echoes of their resilience. You are their legacy, living proof of their strength. As you lie still now, listening, imagine reaching back across time, past cities, past farms, past the first tools, past the caves and plains. You find mothers sitting in the dark, holding children against their skin, humming lullabies no one remembers. They do not know you. They do not know what the world will become, but they carried life forward, and because of them, you are here. Pause for a moment and let that gratitude settle. It is not loud, not dramatic, but deep. The fire is almost out. The embers glow faint, the smoke soft. A mother's hum drifts into the silence, the oldest song in the world. It says only this: you are safe, you are loved, you can rest. Let the sound carry you as it carried countless children before. Let it remind you that even in the harshest worlds, love was stronger than fear, and tenderness was stronger than danger. Our story has carried us through birth, feeding, carrying, protection, teaching, loss, resilience, and legacy. We have walked with prehistoric mothers across plains and fields, through caves and villages. We have seen their struggles and felt their strength. Now, as we close, we honor them not with monuments, but with memory, with the simple act of recognizing their role in keeping humanity alive.